Welcome to my tutorial on the satin stitch, which is stage 2 of the 3 stitches for completing the kits based upon the Bayeux stitch, the stitch used in the Bayeux Tapestry. The satin stitch is the stitch that forms blocks of colour. Stage 1 we did the outline. Stage 2, satin stitch will cover areas of the design, and it's like colouring in. Think of it as the colouring in process. See these lines going across here? That's stage 3, and they will go across the satin stitch. Okay? So what's important at this point is to understand that there's 2 directions that we've got to think of. The satin stitch will go in one direction, and the 3rd stitch, which is called couching, which is not this tutorial, that couching stitch will go across satin stitch. So this is the little project that we saw in the first tutorial where we did the stem stitch to outline. This is a little basic sword taken out of the Bayeux Tapestry. So we're going to do satin stitch today in the particular way that the Bayeux does it. So we'll come up on the very edge, pull it through, and you'll take it to the other end. Doesn't matter how long it is. It covers vast blocks of colour quite quickly, does this stitch. So we'll pull it firm. We won't pull it tight because you don't want it to pucker your fabric, and you don't want it loose because when that couching goes across it, it'll be all nasty and puckery and not neat. So you want it firm but not pulling. And what's peculiar about this stitch is when we come back up, we're going to come back up right next to where we just went in. I'll show you on the back. So I think with modern satin stitch, you end up with long threads on the back as well. Not so with the Bayeux stitch. You will come up again and head back down. And that's it. Treat it like colouring in. You're just filling in blocks of colour. Be mindful of the direction that you're going in. So if you're wanting your couching to go across that way, top to bottom, well, therefore these stitches need to go lengthways. So it's a basic concept. It's fantastic for covering areas of colour quickly. Sometimes I wonder if they did the Bayeux Tapestry in a great rush. I don't know. 70 metres long. I can imagine it can't have been that big of a rush, but it's a very effective way to colour in blocks of colour. So you can see that taking shape now. Just make sure you get right by that stem stitch, and I'll show you the back. There's no long threads going across. Okay. I think the trickiest time I've ever had with this stitch is when completing when completing the Carmina Gadelica design. The Carmina Gadelica design has very long, thin areas. You've got these long, you've got satin stitch to go from this line here all the way down here, and it can be quite well, it can get tangled. So I have found just keeping, you know, all fingers on, I found keeping all fingers on deck while I'm, what may be handy in particularly curved areas like this is the use of pins. If you place a pin, so if you're coming around a corner, you can just put a pin on this inner curve and it will just help keep that long satin stitch in place. Helps it to behave itself.